first question comes from Matt, and Matt's a senior engineer in aerospace. I know I'm underpaid for my level and industry, but how should I be asking for a raise? When I bring it up to my boss, he keeps telling me that he's working on it. This is the same thing he's been saying for the last 12 months. How should I handle the situation?
There must be a dozen versions of this song and dance. And Matt, appreciate you asking. And it's a really important question. Could be raises, could be promotions, could be, special projects. I hear it all the time, Daniel. I'm asking my boss for XYZ and I'm getting the runaround, like the constant brick wall. I'm just a very simple response like, oh yeah, it's in the works, or, checks in the mail, and nothing's ever happening. So the first thing I'll share, I hope it's not an aha or rocket science to people, but frankly, nobody cares about you wanting a raise but you, Matt. It's not their most important thing. Really, at the end of the day, it's not about what you want. It's about what the company wants and needs. So if you're going to go in there and make a big ask for a raise, or even a small ask for a small raise, if you're going to ask for more, the whole conversation needs to be framed in the context of what's in it for the company. Why should the company give you that raise? So we always frame these conversations about promotion, raises, special opportunities around what the company wants. So the very first conversation for me, Daniel, is always, I want to introduce the idea of me getting a raise and get curious with my leader about what it's going to take to make that happen. So Daniel, if we'll role play here, you can be my boss to say, hey Daniel, we appreciate the time today. I know we've had a lot of topics to cover on projects, but I wanted to have a quick career discussion with you. And honestly, I feel like I'm at a point in my career now where I've really added a lot of value to the team. I've sharpened a lot of skills in the last 2 years as I've been with the company. And I feel like the value that I'm contributing on these projects is really at a level above where my compensation is at, versus where I started 2 years ago. And so I'd like to ask you, what's it going to take for me to show you and the company that I'm ready for a promotion or a compensation increase based on that value that I'm creating? So I'm just opening the door to this idea. I'm not directly asking for it yet. I'm not coming in here with my ego, punching you in the face, saying like, I deserve this. I'm just opening it up. We're going to have a conversation together like we're on the same side of the table, going after this common problem of how I feel in the situation. And I use that word feel intentionally, Daniel, because at the end of the day, like, this isn't about what's right or wrong, what is true or false. It's just about, this is my values. This is how I feel about the situation. I mean, does that kind of vibe, how did that resonate for you, Daniel? Like just being on the receiving end of that, what do you think?
I don't know how I would respond to that, right? Out of context, but I just felt a spirit of curiosity from you.
Yes.
It wasn't, what does Zach want? It wasn't a demand. It was, this is where I would like to get, and I want to provide value to get there. How do we bridge that gap?
Totally.
It felt like a spirit of collaboration rather than combat.
Exactly. And I love that you said, I'm not sure how I would respond, because the truth is most engineering managers and directors and VPs also don't know how they would respond. And that's okay. And that's why it's a curiosity driven energy. Matt, frankly, your boss, he doesn't have a one-click easy button to just give you a raise and it's over. This is going to require some effort. And so we want to be open to that reality that the first conversation is probably not going to come to a clear conclusion, but now we've opened the door to it. Here's the second piece about all of these conversations that's really important. We get lost in the general. So when we're talking about a promotion, we're talking about a raise, we're talking about something that we want in our career, we leave the conversation with our leader in the general. What's it going to take for me to get this raise? Or I want a raise. How do we make this happen? And your boss will come back with a general response like, hey, well, we need you to really step up your leadership here or there. Or, if you deliver well on this next project, then we can talk about it. Or, hey, you're doing great. Let me go check with HR and just kind of figure that out. And, budgets are tight right now and I'll get back to you. Right? This is that general sort of like, hey, we talked about an idea in the general sense, but we didn't actually get to any specific next steps or actions. And so your responsibility, Matt, is to make sure that every time you have a conversation with your leader, that you're not settling for a generic, non-committal type of response, that you're continuing to drill down to the specific next step. So what does that look like? Hey, boss, Daniel, I really appreciate that you're going to go look at that. I would love to hear that feedback. So when can we reconnect next and talk about the feedback that you've gotten from HR? Or you might say, well, we really need to see you contribute at a higher level in order to justify any kind of raise, Zach. Well, boss, yeah, I appreciate that. So can you help me understand, what will that look like? How will we know that I'm contributing at that higher level? When can we talk about some specific measurable outcomes that I need to focus on in order to get there? And you'll notice I'm starting again with when can we talk about it, because Daniel's not prepared today to give me that answer, right? He didn't come into work this morning with how is Zach going to get a raise already in his plan. So that early conversation is just about getting commitments, moving the ball forward, but be specific. And I'll just add in one little more asterisk here, that time is not a good answer. All right, if your boss says, hey, you just need 6 more months in the role, great, but go deeper and say, I really appreciate that 6 months. So can we talk about what it is that needs to be happening during those 6 months that makes sure that this is the outcome, right? Because time is nothing. Time is a proxy for activities that happen during time. So just be careful about getting the runaround with time. Phase 2 is where we switch from asking about the gap and we start demonstrating how we have delivered everything asked for. So Daniel, you and I get back together for our one-on-one. I say, hey boss, I want to revisit that career development discussion and the raise that I want to see happen here in my career. We talked about A, B, and C as being the key things that I need to demonstrate in order to make that happen. And I, after delivery of A, feel extremely good about having leveled up in my leadership, my skills, my capability, the value that we created for the company. And if anything, I think we've over-delivered on what you asked for here. And I just wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you see that is misaligned with our expectation on A? So I'm no longer asking about the gap. I'm demonstrating to you that I've closed all the gaps. And what I'm looking for is you to acknowledge and agree, yeah, Zach, great job on A. You're crushing it on B. And yeah, you're almost there on C. Like, maybe one more thing here, but we want to get to that common understanding that I've knocked all these things out of the park. Because once you acknowledge as my leader that I am at or above the level of all the things that we agreed need to happen, suddenly you're without excuse to go to bat for me to make this raise happen. That principle of consistency kicks in. Phase 3 is, you hope you don't get there. But phase 3 is, if this is truly important for you, you need to get this raise. Maybe it's for personal reasons, for families, it's just your own values. If you're not making progress in your career, you want to move on or do something else because you're hungry for that result. It doesn't matter why. But if you're there and it's not happening, phase 3, it's the relentless pursuit of the outcome. And this is where we level up in how bold we make this ask. We say, hey, Daniel, listen, we talked about this. We agreed that A, B, and C is what needs to happen. And I've already over-delivered on A, B, and C. I need to understand what's really happening as to why this raise isn't getting done. You may hear the excuses. Hey, my hands are tied. The budget is frozen. Hiring freeze. Okay. Well, Daniel, if it's out of your power to make this happen, who do I need to talk to understand what it's going to take? This is a tough place to be, right? You're basically saying to your boss, look, if you're powerless, I'm not going to accept that as the barrier to the growth that I really feel like is absolutely merited based on the value I'm creating. And so who needs to get involved, right? Now, again, these are choices you've got to make, Matt, based on how important this really is to you in the full context of your vision and values. Just in terms of how I coach people through this, if you've already had that shared curious conversation, you've got a commitment from them on what it's going to take, and you've delivered that value and you're delivering those results day in and day out, then if it's still not happening and you want to go push and make it happen, the courage to have those hard conversations is where you got to go. That's my suggestion for you, Matt. I hope it helps. But most important thing, I'd say, just hearing the question, being in that 12-month runaround, I'm getting the same answer from my boss every time. We got to approach this with a whole new lens and say, hey, boss, I know you're working on it, but what's the next step? When can we talk about exactly what needs to happen here and really pushing for a specific commitment?